pass it along.
Who's this?
It's for your petition.
Oh.
I got more signatures for you.
Are we recording?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting of the Bylaw Charter Review Committee, Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. It's 5 p.m. And we have a full committee here, so a call to order. Public comment, there is no public. Review and approval of minutes.
Move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
A second.
And these are the minutes that had the modest correction in them.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, okay, all right.
Any other comments? All those approved?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Great, unanimous. Continue.
One extension, because I wasn't there.
And one extension, sorry, Anita.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Uh,
Are we expecting company tonight?
I had thought so, but I guess not. So our liaison is not here.
With school vacation, so.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right, it's school
It's
vacation.
school vacation.
I thought that the petitioner might come.
They seem, well, in terms of it, I've got review and possible votes on articles for changes and the citizens petitions. And my understanding, Sandy, please help me with this, is that we're looking at these to see if they conflict with anything in the charter or the bylaws, or the bylaws.
And most particularly that they're numbered correctly as far as where they are inserted.
And where they are inserted.
Yes.
So we're not really reviewing them for
Right.
the content as to whether this tree should be cut down or that tree should be preserved.
No, we don't do approve or disapprove. We just take a look at form and substance. and-
It's the form of, is it going to pass muster? This is the last set of eyes to look at it, so it passes muster at the State House.
Which
So-
at this point is almost a moot point because the warrant's already printed. So if we find anything amiss,
Right.
it's too late to fix it here.
Yes, that is true. Well, considering that we didn't, the way that I got most of these was by going into the printed warrant.
Right.
So, all right, so now, because we are the ones who put through most of these bylaw charter changes, we could move to support them.
So
So we have Article 43, which is amend General Bylaw, Chapter 7, which for the public, if I can get to that one. That is the one that the Board of Health is being added 2 alternates, which makes sense, I think, and I wish this had gone further and said all committees could have 2 alternates, but, so that's that one. Number 44, amend General Bylaw, Chapter 271. This is the one that several years ago at town meeting voted in an article to have the votes of the Select Board and Finance Committee members for recommendations be printed in the warrant with each individual's recorded vote. But the charter, the bylaw itself was never changed. So this just changes, does the housekeeping for that. And the other one was Article 45.
Before you go there,
Yes.
44 was a two-parter. It was also the moderator controlling the
Yes.
non-voter speakers.
So we wanted to have the authority of the moderator
Right.
being able to do things. It also changed Chapter 3, there's others. Chapter 3, let's see, so now we're on 45, amend the Harwich Charter. These are a variety of, we're going to call them housekeeping. They're small changes. One of them is to, rather than have town meetings start on the first Monday, we are saying within that first week, which gives us the opportunity for Saturday, other things. Next one is just changing it, one of the places where selectmen has to be changed to select board. And we've cleaned up some authorizing the select board chair to sign warrants in the absence of the town administrator without having to go through a vote. We added the human resources position to the powers of appointment. and that the human resources position, what is being contemplated, and it's in the budget, but it is not an official position yet, that it would report to both the town administrator and the select board. So that's it. It's mostly small little things.
Should I make a motion to support 43, 44, and 45?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
We said aye.
Got, okay, so we're good, so full, that's a full. Would we like to consider for a, standing up and saying at town meeting that we have reviewed these, they seem to make sense, they fit in, and they seem to be in the appropriate places. So would we like to consider a motion that we support these articles, these three?
Didn't we just do that?
No, we voted, is that, what was the motion? Was that the motion?
Support the
Motion
articles.
to support number 43, 44, and 45.
I guess I'm paying attention. Doing a good job.
All right.
All right, so we're
So
good.
yes, we'd be very happy to have you
Right.
stand up at town meeting and tell everybody we support these motions.
Are you sure, considering I don't even know what I'm talking about half the
Well,
time?
that's okay, that
As
puts
long as
you,
no one asks questions, you're fine.
Good point.
that puts you
I
right
think
up
it-
there with some other folks I can think of.
I think it's a good idea because we've looked at it a million times, but for the voters, you know, they hear the words and they got the blessing and, okay, this is housekeeping and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that, because really, that's what most of these are.
Right.
Now, are housekeeping. The human resource director is more significant
Right.
change, but it's still, this stuff is primarily housekeeping.
And that basically is more up to the select board to explain.
Yes, to explain that and to decide how to do that, if they, if they so inclined.
But also where they fall right in a row, that makes it,
1, 2, 3.
yeah, I mean, you could even cover 1, 2, 3 or whatever method you like.
All right, on to new business. Article 10 is the tree preservation bylaw, and we should take these probably one by one. What do we got?
I don't know. All good for.
All right, petitioned article, tree preservation bylaw, Article 10, which would put a bylaw into the town bylaws on tree preservation, what could be, and it's a series of what could be cut down, what not, what has to be preserved, how you have to go about it. You need permits if you want to do something outside of the bylaw. I think we had already heard from Patrick Otten in a prior meeting talk about this, so I didn't see that we needed to ask him again. So we read through it. Is there anything in here that appears to conflict with something else? It's
I
a
took
long
a-
one.
I took a little time looking at the placement,
Yep.
and unfortunately, I forgot my warrant with my notes on it about that, but going from memory, it looked like he had selected a whole new section.
Yes, it's a new chapter.
Right.
It's a whole new chapter. It's not sticking it in with something else. It is a whole new
And
chapter.
what chapter is it?
175-1.
Right.
Okay.
So he's got a whole new chapter.
After marijuana and before minors.
Yep. So it was an open chapter available.
Is there, I wonder if there's like a master list, you know, like you would have with the chart of accounts, anywhere that says, you know, future use, this might be this, or, in other words, 171 is marijuana. I wonder if there's a list anywhere, you know, that says 72, 73, 74, and 75 might cover these areas.
I don't
or-
believe so.
Okay. You know what I mean, like a chart of accounts.
Yeah, no, I did not,
Obviously.
I don't think,
Yeah.
There are reservations for anything.
Reserve.
Yeah.
Right, reses,
Reserve.
yeah.
Reserved for this.
Yeah, in that case, then.
So the answer is yes, it is a whole new chapter on its own.
Yeah.
Any other,
I was fine with it. Yeah,
I don't see
I think
anything.
it's pretty thorough.
It's.
it sure is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to see Mike Ford read this.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't.
That is not going to
No,
happen.
that's not going to happen.
You wanna lose your quorum quick in a hurry,
Really,
right?
really quick, that'll do it. Read this whole thing.
Uh-huh.
It is, I mean, it is extensive, but it is also, it tries to hit all the points. And I think it's pretty,
Absolutely.
it's pretty complete.
I thought so.
So in Article 10, tree preservation, do we feel that this is, passes the test of it fits into the,
As far as I can tell.
okay. All right. Do we need to vote on that?
I
I
don't,
don't think so.
I don't think so either.
No.
Okay. Next one is Article 13, which is Home Rule Petition on Pesticides. And this is basically the town meeting asking the Select Board to petition the court of Commonwealth of Massachusetts for special legislation allowing us as a town to have a pesticides bylaw. So this is not creating a bylaw, it is asking the Select Board to ask the court to let us do it, which means it would come back as a bylaw in a future town meeting if it passes.
There isn't really much to be said about that at this point. Anyway, Article 14 is the same, isn't it?
Article 14 is the same thing.
fertilizer.
well,
Yes.
And Article 14 is fertilizer because it's also asking for a special act of the Commonwealth.
Right.
So it is not creating a bylaw either at this point. If either 13 or 14 pass, then they would come back as a bylaw, giving it its chapter number, et cetera.
you know what's interesting about that, though, is I didn't pick that up, that 13 was about special legislation for that. I guess my question is that, first, we have to get permission from the state to have our own town regs.
Yes.
And then we would write our regs, so it's almost like he's done a fell swoop of two at once. He's trying to do, Harwich will write its own regs, and these are the regs.
And this is what it looks like.
Right.
Yes.
Which,
Well, I think to give the petitioner credit, there are times when town meeting articles say, we'd like the select board to go off and do such and thus.
right, yeah.
And then it creates a
Yeah.
discussion of, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Who would be, who would have to abide by,
right.
blah, 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 blah. I think that the
Yeah.
petitioner has done the job
Well-
of saying, this is what my intention is.
Right, and I mean, that's fine either way. This has been back one or two times at least already
least,
anyway.
yes.
But it's just that, to me, if we ask the state to be able to write our own, I mean, if you had any problems with Patrick's version, you always have to vote against it, because the result is already in front of you. Whereas, I might want the wherewithal to write my own, but mine might be a little different than his, so,
That is probably true. So on town meeting floor, we could probably, because once the state gets involved, they may change it too,
right.
because they have the right to do that.
Right.
They do.
Yep.
And they do. We have had that happen before. We had to have something come back to
That's
town
right.
meeting because it didn't fit something or other.
Right.
And on town meeting floor, somebody can make a change to this,
Yeah,
to the language.
except for its petition, so, they can
Oh,
have been
yes,
there on town
absolutely.
meeting floor. Yeah, that's right. Not
Right,
in the
because
deal.
all a petition article
Yeah.
means is
Gotcha.
it has to go into the warrant.
Okay.
Any other comments? It'll certainly generate a lot of conversation.
I don't really think it will. It's the third year. I mean, how much more can we say about it?
That's true.
you know? I mean, the other
think
one's fine,
fertilize-
I know. This is the
fertilizers-
third year.
On fertilizers.
Right.
Second
Third.
on
No,
pesticides?
brand new.
That's
It
brand
was
new.
talked about before, but it wasn't.
Got it.
No.
All right. Article 15 is support for a swimming pool. Again, a petition article, and it is to see if Harwich Town Meeting supports the concept of an Olympic swimming pool and attendant facilities. So what this is looking for is to ask the Select Board, Town Administrator, and Capital Outlay Committee to consider including a pool, et cetera, in the town's capital plan.
So it's not really a bylaw.
Oh, no, this is not a
No.
bylaw. But I just wanted all the
Yeah, no, that's
all the
fine.
citizens' petitions to be
Yeah,
on here.
gotcha.
This is going to generate some interesting conversation.
So if it's not a bylaw, it doesn't really concern us. Correct.
No, it doesn't.
No, I mean,
Just
until
an
we get to
interesting-
town
it's
meeting.
just an
then we
interesting topic for discussion.
do our
discussion.
Yeah.
individual votes.
Right, and I added it just because I said,
Yeah, no,
okay, there's
that's fine.
5,
Yeah.
put all the petition articles in here,
Mhm.
before somebody asks us why we didn't look at that one.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting because I find this an interesting article because in 2018, which I think was 6 years ago, the cost to do this was $18 million. And I was involved with Carolyn, the director of the community center, and helping her put together, she did all the legwork, putting together the numbers. It's a lot of money.
I thought that was like 2013, no?
It was a while
I
ago.
remember one further back, or maybe the years just seem longer.
It's possible, yeah.
Oh, that could be.
I don't know, they seem to be getting shorter.
Yeah, I think they're getting shorter.
They're rolling around way too quickly.
So it'll be interesting because one of the things that this article doesn't really talk about, kind of glosses into, is the annual operating expense of a pool.
You know, there's a lot of things I'd like. I'd like a 1% interest rate.
Yeah,
I'd
I
like a
know.
Cadillac. I'd
How does
like
it feel to want?
You know, and if you're not going to tell me the parameters, then I'm afraid I have to say no. You know.
But-
Didn't they pull the budget for the historical? So what makes you think they're going to?
Don't know.
And the golf.
Has anyone noticed the roads in Harwich?
Why not? I can't hear you.
The roads.
Has anybody noticed the roads?
Yeah,
They're horrendous, but anyway.
I know. Yeah. Well, like I say, I'd like a
Priorities, I
1%
guess.
interest rate. I'll put that in for petition next year.
All right, the last citizens petition was amend Chapter 140, General Bylaws, Chapter 46. And it is to another home rule petition to amend, asking the state for special legislation to amend the Affordable Housing Trust bylaw, Chapter 140, which is what we have, and add the phrasing attainable housing as opposed in addition to affordable housing.
I thought it was well laid out.
It's well laid out, but it's also going to be an interesting thing because my understanding of affordable housing, when you get funding from all of these state and federal affordable housing to fund it, is very specific parameters. They don't have attainable in it. So how something that is going to be attainable, how it's going to be funded is going to be interesting. Because you can't use it for you can't use CPC money, which is what they have. You can't use this, you can't use that. It's going to be interesting in terms of this.
I would like to draw your attention, Linda,
Yes, ma'am?
to the fact that in the middle of the first paragraph of the article, it refers to the Board of Selectmen.
Where?
Oh, it does.
Yes, it does.
And I am stunned that you did not see that.
I didn't either, and I read this carefully.
Editorial change unless the Board of Selectmen, which is Select Board,
Yes,
approves. Yes, I know. But this is the petitioner,
Yeah.
yes, I
and
know.
I can't change that.
No, yes, I know.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of discussion, if anybody at town meeting brings up that attainable, you can't use the same funding sources.
There's also a typo. in the capitalized and act authorizing the town of Harwich affordable housing trust.
Where is it?
The word affordable, look at it closely.
Definition of attainable,
No, in the capital letters, right after the
Oh,
first paragraph, there's an F instead of an E. At least in the online version.
the purpose of the Harwich affordable,
Affordable.
affordable, yes, affordable, affordable. Oh, well.
Yeah, this will be an interesting journey on that. I somehow don't see it happening, but
It'll be interesting as to, again, if somebody brings up, how are you gonna fund something with attainable? Because it sounds like a warm and fuzzy things to do. Oh, yes, attainable housing, this is, but it may be meaningless from the perspective of how do you fund it?
well, he's putting in a definition of it, but again, as
But
you
it's
say,
it's outside affordable.
How do you fund it? Right.
But remember the rooms tax, that 25%, does that go to affordable or does it go to housing? I don't know, I would have to look it up. The 25%, like wastewater
yeah,
gets
yeah.
some and
It's affordable.
you know.
Attainable
Sure
is a brand-new word.
Well, I know, but I wonder if it just says housing, at any rate.
I think it says affordable, but, we'd have to check.
But that would be a pool of money for them.
All right, so since this was an existing, this is the bylaw change, any other comments? Okay, so we seem to be okay? Good. All right. Did anybody want to know that who supported what in the, I did write down who supported what in the select board and the FinCom.
Yeah, no, I read it.
Okay,
Just that one difference was on, which one was pesticides, I think.
yeah, pesticides. And we do all, yes, and the warrant is being printed without the Finance Committee recommendations and votes. It's going to be in a separate document. So now we're going to shuffle
Back and
warrant,
forth.
this document, that document. It should be all in one.
I thought they were gonna, at least, I understood they weren't gonna try to fit them into the articles, but I thought they would at least put them at the end of the booklet, so at least you're going within one,
Yeah, now you're going to
you
have,
know, yeah.
Well,
why not just
suppose-
put it in the booklet?
Right,
well,
at the end,
With the
supposedly
articles.
Because it was late,
right,
it was a day late getting to them.
because it was so timely.
Because everything else was so timely, yes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they didn't have some of these articles, like the Finance Committee apparently didn't have some of these articles to even look at
Right.
until,
No, they'd
it was the
acted-
day after.
They'd acted on all but I think one or two of them by the deadline. They just needed to do
Cut and paste.
2 more, and those were in this office. First thing in the morning. They met Tuesday night, it was in the office on Wednesday morning. And they could have gone in.
Yep, so they're not
They
going to be in.
chose not to.
I would have liked them at least in the same booklet, so you're not trying to hold
I know,
two
because it's,
different.
and the booklet already is awkward.
Right.
So you're going to be sitting there with two documents, and last year we got the motions. Remember, we got the motions document? So you're going to have the motions document, the warrant, and the Finance Committee recommendations.
Well, they're going to include it in the motions document.
Ah, in the
Yeah.
motions document. So we still are, but we're still with two.
Right. Lots of paper clips.
Yeah.
Keep my place.
It's folding and everything. Any other comments on the citizens' petitions? They seem to meet the test of appropriately being in the bylaws, et cetera. Okay. All right, we're doing our job here. We had on tonight's agenda a review of the Charter, Chapter 6, which is general vacancies and moderator discussion and possible votes. Sandy, you're on.
Okay, everybody got a copy? Because I made the extras for
Yeah.
our vast audience. Everybody out there have a copy? Oh, good. These are a lot of just things just to throw out here for the purpose of discussion. Just thoughts as we've watched things proceed and worried about other issues, and starting with 611, discussing the idea of more elected positions. I only throw that in there. I think there are some positions that might lend themselves really well to being elected. Which ones to be determine, but going back historically through town reports from years ago when we had any number of elected positions, including the highway surveyor, which
Is that
clearly,
right?
yeah, which clearly would not be appropriate today. I mean, that can't happen. But what I noticed and found interesting was that the more elected positions you have, the higher percentage of turnout of voters you have. Because if your neighbor is running for, oh, I don't know, say planning board, if that's one that you decided to make elected, well, you're going to go up to vote for your neighbor for planning board, where you might not have bothered if you didn't care who was on the select board. So it does seem to bring more people out the more elected positions you have. So that's really the main thought behind that. Maureen?
I was intrigued by this, and so I gave it considerable thought. And, well, I had a couple of problems. For instance, one assessor must have certain credentials. How do you translate that into an election? One of the Board of Health must have certain credentials. How do you translate that in? I was thinking it might be interesting to try it with planning, but I did not have the time to look back and see if they have any specific credentials. The other two I did are, actually, I don't even know how many members they have. It says 5 to 9 on the thing, and I'm not sure what they have right now. So I was kind of interested in maybe one,
It's
you
good.
know.
It's a great point. I wasn't really specifically targeting. I was kind of going back to how
Okay.
things were done. Those are mostly boards and commissions that were elected at one point in time. So that's kind of
Yeah.
how they found their way in there. The only one that is not existing yet is the suggestion
Right.
for a charter compliance / arbitration board, for which I think the time has come. First of all, it might save us a ton in legal fees.
Right.
Secondly, we're not seeing the charter being very well honored in many instances at this point. So, but that's something that was done, as I said, in 2016. We worked on that. It didn't go well, but a lot of the same folks who didn't like it then are feeling a little more kindly towards it today, and I think it's something we really, really need to think about in this town. So.
I think to answer Noreen, I think that there are some of these regulatory boards, the ones that actually have regulatory authority, I think that they have training classes so that when someone gets elected, they have to go to a variety of training courses, read material, and get educated.
I think it's more than that, from what I
Well,
read.
but I'm just saying that I think there is a process that may not be in the charter and may not be in the elected, but once you get to it, that you have certain qualifications you have to do.
Yeah. Well,
But it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, it's
No, I think the major point is that some of these committees have so much potential effect on the town as a whole, on people's lives and what have you, that sometimes when they get too entrenched, they forget who they're working for.
yeah.
And that's kind of one of the beauties of electing people, is that you have to go back and explain yourself every few years. Not a
One of
bad
the-
thing.
A downside of this is it's hard enough to get people
Right.
on committees now. And if people have to run
Right.
and actually go and collect their little 60 signatures and stand out in front of post offices, collect signatures and do things like this, is that going to keep people from running for office? There's a plus and a minus to it.
Or would they be more inclined to run for an office that had a little bit more autonomy and could operate a little more freely than some of our committees are being allowed to do now?
That's another side of it. That's a
Another
pro
side
and a
of it,
con,
yeah.
yeah.
As I say, it was purposes of discussion as much as anything. Some things to think about.
Well, there are other ones that have significant fiduciary responsibility, like Finance Committee and Capital Outlay. They spend, Capital Outlay puts forth spending a ton of money in terms of capital projects, And the Finance Committee has a significant impact on reviewing budgets and making sure that things, asking all those questions and being that review. Those are two other committees that would be potentials. And from some of the work that I did, there are committees/commissions/boards that are elected across the Cape. There are planning boards that are elected, there are boards of health.
Well, the requirement for a health professional, is that I didn't even think to look. Is that our requirement under the bylaw, or is that a state requirement?
That's
Well,
a good question. I think we'd have to look at that and
I think it's
go a
our
little
requirement
further.
under a bylaw, but, because in theory, like a planning board, board of assessors, you have professional staff with that expertise.
Yes,
So it's not really imperative that you have people on a committee with that
Well, with-
specific
I'm sorry.
skill set.
With health, and it was in our charter, I think, I didn't go to the state, but it was that one be an MD or have extensive public health background.
yes.
Yeah, but I think that might be our bylaw.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it
that,
is.
I don't
as
think it's
opposed
a-
to a state requirement.
Right, yeah. I
We
didn't-
did
I didn't
that,
go
so-
far. Yep, I agree.
That's a good question to find out. Is that one of those archaic things? Because you're right, many of these committees have professional staff now. Was that a point where we didn't have a health director? And so therefore you did want a person with medical experience, and yet,
This is actually a more recent.
is it more recent?
Yeah, because it used to be, before the charter, the Board of Health, the Board of Assessors, and the Board of Selectmen were almost always the same three people.
That's right, because they were elected in 3 positions.
They were elected individually to each of those 3 positions. And I
That's
can only
correct.
think of one time where that may have gotten upended on one election, and I can't remember which one it was exactly.
So you ended up with all 3 people being all 3?
Yes.
Were you being elected once or 3 times?
3 times.
3 times. I think it was the one with Norman Clark, when Norman, the father.
Yeah,
There was something that went on there. I think he was elected to the board, but not to the Board of Selectmen.
right, yeah. You're right, I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it only ever happened once, and then, of course, when we went to the 5 members,
Mhm.
we separated those positions, and separated those boards, so.
A question though, do you think, just throwing it out there, that if we had a charter compliance, that this would help anyone who would have something to fall back on if they were having a hard time given by the Board of Selectmen or Select Board? Without being elected, they would have something to fall back on. Nah, maybe not.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Not sure I understand
Yeah.
your question
Yeah, I know.
either.
I think what I'm trying to say is if we had a charter compliance board and someone on a committee that was appointed by the select board were having a problem,
And that's where they'd go.
they would go to the charter
If
compliance.
it involved a
Right,
misuse
so,
of the charter.
correct.
Yeah.
So would that alleviate having to elect these other positions?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's kind of 2 different issues.
Right.
Right, but I'm thinking that, it may help someone knowing that there's a compliance board that they can go to, rather than being autonomous that they're elected.
Got
Do
it.
do you see where I'm
Yes.
going with that?
Yeah.
I think it's a little of both.
Okay, all right. It was just kind of a
Yeah.
thought, just kind of throwing it out there.
Is it a charter arbitration or a charter bylaw arbitration and compliance commission?
TBD, I don't know. Charter, I think
Yep.
most specifically, I'm not sure a committee like that would want to be involved in enforcing bylaws.
Bylaws.
I mean, that could be a whole cluster, so,
No.
good point, though.
Procedure.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Right.
I think it would stick with the charter,
No, strictly charter.
strictly charter. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that so confusing. My mind was trying to think of how I could word that. but-
Yeah, I had to think about what you were trying to say.
Say, yeah.
Did somebody being elected, does that give them more teeth?
Right, as opposed to,
And
now that we
appointed.
know it's appointed, we have a compliance board that if they were having a problem, they could go to the compliance board.
I think you just have to be very, thoughtful about what positions you might want to see elected.
Right.
And maybe you start out with one or two, maybe less impactful, to see if it doesn't help get people out there, or help get people to the polls to vote and that sort of thing. Because I think that's, when there isn't much, as you can see by April 9th, when there isn't much of anything to vote on, nobody shows up.
I think they were
What was the,
200
272.
Less than
295
300.
people who,
Right.
285 people voted.
Yeah.
285, and my husband and I were two of them.
Yeah.
And you were there? Did you vote?
I went.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to have a list of those names. I'll bet you they're the people that go to town meeting.
More than likely.
Yeah.
You can get a list, that's public
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, right, no, I know.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't bother.
Probably take a
but-
FOIA, but that's beside the point. All right, so I think that a couple of good questions came out of this. You know, one is, I'd like to know the answer, is a medical person on the Board of Health a state requirement in some state law, or is it just our bylaw?
Yeah.
Because that's a good question. I also think it might be interesting to poke through the various town websites and see what's elected and what's appointed.
Well, there's very little elected.
Yeah, there's very little elected, but are there specific ones that rise to the top? Select Board is one, School Committee I know is
Water,
pretty standard.
wastewater.
Water is pretty, but are there others, like Planning Board, is there some group that kind of pops that 5 towns elect that group?
See what other towns are doing. It's what
Yes.
yeah, that would be certainly a great thing to take a look at with all of them.
Yeah.
See what works and what doesn't in other places.
Yeah.
But it's just something that I think would be good to give some thought to and do a little research
Yeah.
around.
And I'd like, well, the assessing one also, how it read was that they have real estate credentials. I don't remember the exact wording.
There's another one.
And that was one assessor must have those. But again, I don't know if that's in another document or just ours or what. I only got that far.
See, this is where a consultant would come in handy.
That's right.
I think the assessors, though, don't they have courses that they have to
Yes,
take?
that's another one. I think
Yeah,
that they
I
have,
think you
they
have
have
to-
courses they have to do I don't know if it's every year, but I think they have to stay up to speed with whatever laws are changing. So I think there are,
Right.
because that would be another thing of, once you
Right.
get elected to
What are you
something,
gonna do?
what do you have to do in order to maintain your qualifications?
Well, I can only speak from the position that I held for so many years.
Yep,
We do have certification programs, and you're required by, it was then the International Institute for Municipal Clerks, it's international. So you're required, in even state of Massachusetts, you're required to keep so many credits. You have to keep those up,
continuing education.
continuing education
But
credits.
there's a case in point. With that elected position, it can be anybody who's never set foot in
Yep.
a town clerk's office in their lives can run and get the position, but they only have a certain amount of time to start getting their,
Certification.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So
sometime-
that might be,
I think that's part of how you get to somebody has to have some level of education and knowledge for that. I mean, the select board isn't required to go to anything and get any training in municipal finance,
ever.
ever.
I worked in a city where a treasurer of a large city walked in with absolutely no background. It was pretty bad.
But it's like you get elected to the select
And they were
board,
elected, obviously.
you don't have to,
No.
finance committee doesn't have to go to any training, because I sat on both. We didn't have to go to some class or something, so it does actually beg how do you get the knowledge to,
Well, in most cases, it's from on-the-job training.
yeah, OTJ.
But again, with most of the regulatory, I would say regulatory committees, you have staff that can help you navigate.
Yes.
So you get your feet really wet into it. Finance committee, I mean, even coming, I went from Board of Selectmen to a 3-year stint on the Finance Committee, silly me. Talk about giving up the fun parts of serving and trading it for all
Really.
the nightmare. But even having come from nearly 12 years on the Board of Selectmen, as it was, I didn't say a whole lot for the first year because it's a whole different perspective.
And it's intricate. Some of it is the same as the accounting is basically the same things that you have to do, whether you're in business, you're in a college. Things have to go in little account codes. You have to pay the bills with proper documentation. All of that. There's a whole chunk that is but there's a whole chunk that is completely different.
It is. It's a totally different place, and it's strange to find, because back in the day, most people who ran for selectmen had served a stint on the Finance Committee. It wasn't it wasn't a law, it wasn't a rule, but it was kind of how things were generally done. And I think that was the case right up to Norman Gledhill, who kind of upset the apple cart on that. Came out of nowhere and got himself elected selectman. It's a great place to do and learn from that side of the table, because I think you get a better sense of what it means to be a selectman from the Finance Committee than you do from being a selectman to understanding quite what goes on. In other words,
Yeah.
it's a great progression, and if only you could, do that, I think that would save a lot of problems over the long run, because people would have some sense of it. I came off the Charter Commission, which was a little different, but still pretty steeped in stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is if people ask me, I tell them to get on the Finance Committee, because all the committees have a mission. Most committees have a specific mission: planning, zoning, health. Finance Committee sees a little bit of all of them and sees how it all fits together.
Yeah.
And I think that is helpful to know that, to then step into a select board role.
It's a good training ground.
Yep.
But I think these are very good, and we'll have to come back to some of these as to, because I think the qualification and the training, is there actually anything formal that is done? The medical person, do you need to be a real estate person to do the assessors? There's some,
It says that.
I know it says that, but
Yeah,
is
but
that
is that our
needed?
rule, or is that?
Yep.
A state rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think we got to think about this section a bit more, but a good start.
Anyhow, so 612, I added a line that should not be necessary, but has become clear that it should be made clear, is that boards and committees, once appointed, are in charge of their own meeting destiny. The when, the where, the how, and the what, to as large a degree as possible.
And agendas, I would add, independently established meeting times, places, agendas,
Yeah, agendas is important.
some way to say areas of investigation. I'm not sure how to phrase that.
Agendas.
Okay, to a point, but I'm, looking at committees that are, constituted by charter.
Got it? Okay.
Even to that point, they are still advisory to the Board of Selectmen. But advisory and being controlled by are two different things.
Yep.
And while I think it's perfectly appropriate for the appointing authority to say, we would like you to look at this is where we would like you to concentrate, I don't think it's appropriate for them to dictate how the committee conducts its business unless it's doing something horribly wrong.
So how do we put that in here, that the select board can ask a committee to look at such and thus, because they did with us. They asked us to look at the human resource and how do we do that. But we also set our own agendas. So how do we put in there that it's both? Because being able to set a meeting time and a place, and they're there
Maybe-
with nothing to do.
Maybe you could just have another sentence that says, something like advisory committees will take on assignments from the select board as they present themselves, or am I
Well, I
going
don't-
in the
But
wrong
regulatory
direction?
committees do the same thing.
Right.
I think that kind of goes without saying,
Okay.
although I would have thought that this would have gone without saying
Yeah.
as well. So the problem is that you want to cover enough without covering too much. And clearly, the select board has advisory committees that they can say, let's refer this to, you know, the bicycle committee, and ask them to research this, or real estate and open space, and ask them to research this. There's nothing in this to prohibit that. That's obviously the prerogative of the select board. But I
Yes.
don't think it's the prerogative of the select board to tell a committee it's not allowed to meet.
Right, good point.
Good point. Okay. Any other comments?
I have one more.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On this section, 612, my only problem was that, the sentence, I understand, but I wondered if this committee should take a step back first and review the committees that are listed in the charter. I mean, we're making this clarification only for these committees
That are in the chart.
that are in the charter. But isn't it time to say, why do we have housing and not bicycles,
I don't think one is dependent on the other. I think you do that too. But I
Okay.
don't think
Right,
this is dependent on that. It's whatever committees you want to constitute via the charter.
right,
Or not, if you don't think a committee should be in the charter
Right.
anymore and you want to recommend removing a committee. And again, as far as committees
Right.
that the selectmen themselves create and appoint,
right.
that's a whole different discussion.
But, well, I think there are some that they create and appoint that aren't listed here. I mean,
That
maybe.
is correct.
That's true. We
Yeah.
got about 800 committees.
Yeah, that is
But-
correct. And
but-
those are the ad hoc committees, and those are the ones that they can run whatever way they choose to run, but
My only question, and it's not a huge one for this point, but this sentence defines certain authorities of these committees. And I feel that this sentence should define certain authorities for all committees.
Well, I think that the sentence says, "Town agency established under this charter, chapter 6 and 7, and/or the town bylaws." The town bylaws have committees listed in there. So I think it's covered, but it's a good point.
I'm just basically, in English, I'm trying to say, isn't it time we looked at this list and decided, are these the committees we want to be charter bound, or?
And that will be going on further in
Yeah.
chapter 7.
And
okay.
I'm not trying to write the language
Yeah.
here. I'm simply trying to encapsulate a thought.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, just throwing it out there. It's good though.
Okay.
Okay. where was-
613.
Okay. I included this because this was, 613 is in there. And it's even, Ethics Commission and all that. And it's good that it's in there. But I felt we should also include 614 to take in all committees instead of just
I see.
those. It just seemed like,
Yes.
why would you apply that to one and not the other? So.
Yes, because
It's
I
just
think, yeah, the addition is, one is the elected people, so
Mhm.
that's really, for
Yeah.
us, very few.
Yeah,
This one, the Mass General Law, is the ethics thing, which says that's a whole different area, and that's all the appointed, whether they're a regulatory committee or not.
for the information of anybody who might be reviewing a tape of this down the road, so you know what we're talking about, this is a prohibition against jumping off of a committee and into a job that is involved in the business of the committee. In other words, you can't have somebody before
Conflict
you,
of interest.
you can't have
It's a
somebody
huge
before
conflict
you
of interest.
advocating for a development, and you leave the committee and you go to work for
Yes.
that person.
Right.
You can't then come before the committee again on that. In some cases, never. Some cases, there's a 1 year. So that's all.
And that's the whole ethics and et cetera, and conflict of interest laws of the Commonwealth. I think
Correct.
it makes sense to
No,
put it in there.
I like it. I would just make one clarification to what you just said, which was, you just said, one was the elected and this is the appointed, but this applies to elected and appointed.
That's true,
People, so
but
that's all.
I think the 613 is very specific,
Yeah. No,
elected
no,
town
no,
agency,
614. I'm
and
just saying,
614
right,
is
so-
everybody.
613 says any elected town agency. 614 says any member of any town.
Right, but she said
Yeah, agency.
something different,
So
so
that's,
I'm watching her.
oh, you
Somebody
somebody's
should.
got to.
Somebody's got to. No, that's an interesting question. So is
Yeah.
it any member, whether appointed or elected?
Right.
You know, adding that
However-
in there.
Yeah, however you want to.
Because when I first
Right.
read this, I took this as the appointed people,
And it's everyone.
and it's really everyone. So any member, whether elected or appointed, to make it really clear before somebody starts saying, well, it's not in there for elected.
And they'll still have to pay the fine because that's the state law anyway.
Hallelujah.
So, the last one I have any real suggestion about was the idea of requiring that any committee rotate its chair every 2 years.
I kind of like the
I
way you
like
did
it.
once every 2 years. I thought that gave a little leeway. I kind of like
Right,
that.
I mean, it's fine, if somebody is serving as chair for a couple of years, that's not a problem. It's when somebody is serving as a chair for 9 years.
Right.
And nobody else on that committee ever really has a chance because that person has sort of become the committee and becomes the loudest voice just by virtue of having been in the chair. And I'm not looking at any specific examples right now because I don't know who served in what chair or for how long. But I know that there have been instances over the years where somebody has been in the chair since before dirt.
And there are committees that, when it comes time to reorganize, there's crickets when they say, we need who would like to be nominated for chair, and there's crickets.
Well,
And you have, and the committee, I think this will basically encourage and quite frankly, force the committee members to take leadership roles.
yes, exactly.
Take a leadership role
Yep.
periodically.
You're thinking as you're sitting there with somebody else chairing for a couple of years, gee, I mean, I might be up next to be chair. I personally didn't feel it was healthy for this committee, so.
And it's also there are times when people really don't have the time to
Right.
chair now,
Working,
but
yeah.
2-3 years from now, they're on their second round, whatever it is, they're ready to chair. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Noreen,
I will say that.
even that finger.
I know it. You can just break it off. It's your own.
Little finger of fate.
If you see me come into town meeting with a little splint on
I'm going
it,
to get
you'll
her
know.
one of those big fingers that they have at the baseball games.
Oh, yes,
Yes, Noreen.
You'll have to talk to Gary, see, he might just whack, but, having been on more committees than I care to remember, there are many committees that reorganize right after the election, but I don't see any harm in leaving this, and I don't see any harm when people reorganize right after the election either. I don't see any harm either way.
Well, then you want to change the charter because it specifies that you will reorganize the first meeting after the beginning of the
Right.
fiscal year.
And I have said that to many committees, and they've said, no, we want to do it now, because the reason is, they have a reason, they want to get going. You have an election May 20th, they don't want to wait till July 1st to find out who's writing this memo. So, I mean, I don't have a vested interest, I'm just saying I've had the experience go.
Well, that's
It would
an
be fine to
interesting
do
point.
it after the annual town meeting, the first meeting you have after the annual town meeting,
But the-
or within the first month, or
Not after the annual town meeting, because there'd be people running for election.
After the
after
election.
the election.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it's.
whatever.
So that's an interesting thing, so that's another,
So it could go either way.
this one,
But I do understand if they want
Well,
to get going.
the select
rather
board
than wait.
reorganizes after the election, even
Yes,
though
they do.
this would apply to them as well.
yes.
Right.
So there is a separate
So
citation.
maybe that's a change that would be worth looking at. is
Yeah,
to
a separate
make it-
citation.
Yeah.
Could you go by July 1st?
Pardon me?
Well, you could just,
Reorganize.
you could just say your first meeting after
After?
the, annual
Fiscal
town
year.
election.
Right.
I think the reason that, didn't they,
I don't know why it was, I think it was just,
the reason they did it that way is because they appoint the committee members
Oh, you're
In
right.
June.
in
You're
June.
right.
Oh, so,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you, Anita.
That's why there are people being appointed,
Appointed.
people coming off as of June
Right.
30.
Yeah,
So therefore,
I just remember.
the first
right.
meeting in
That's a good
July is when you have your
Yeah.
newly,
So that's probably why the charter was put
Yeah.
this way.
Well,
excellent
leave it.
point, Anita.
Yeah,
Because you're right, because a lot of the
Mhm.
reappointments and appointments happen in June.
right,
Right.
correct. Yeah, no, excellent. Leave it.
Ha.
Yeah, you got me.
what is this, a
Well, we're
compet-
on elected board, so we just
competition
think
here?
of ourselves, so.
Under vacancies, so section 2, you had no suggestions.
No. I just cut and paste that for what we have under section 2, and I just didn't see anything that,
Can we have this have it be a little more, so, town agency shall be filled by the select board together with the remaining members of the respective board. Should we add something like, they vote together in a joint meeting?
make it a little more procedurally
Yes.
clear.
Because it writes is filled with the select board together with the remaining members. Okay, so the remaining, does that mean the select board just appoints someone and the remaining members of that committee are out in the hallway?
No.
It doesn't say that
It's
has
not
to
well-
be,
It's not well written.
so how about, can we add some words like they will vote together in a joint meeting? Or something like that?
Yeah. That sounds good. Just depends on what joint they're meeting at.
True. But it's just that to clarify that the two committees come together and vote, because I know that happened at the school committee a number of years ago.
And if there's not a write-in candidate for water commission, it'll happen again.
Yes, it will. All right, moderator?
I have nothing.
Well, I have one, but it's.
Moderator?
Unmoderated.
Okay.
It's just that I feel we should leave this as it is for any future moderators, only because we all know about the attendance of 3 meetings of the finance committee.
Right.
But I think we should just leave it.
Well, I think that's where a
Anyway.
charter compliance would be able to call them on the carpet. Because I sat on that finance committee for 6 years and never saw them. Right?
$1,000 is a lot of money for only one town meeting a year.
All right. Thank you for all the effort, Sandy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we had some good conversation. I think
I'm
we
sorry our
already,
guest wasn't here.
I think we already discussed having a report to town meeting that we did support 3 of the articles and that we reviewed others, and nothing came to the attention that it didn't seem to be not fitting our bylaws or charter. So I think that's it.
I think we're good.
All right. Any other requests? Any other business that anybody has? Because the next one, we've done that, is the school committee, which is Noreen.
I'm just gonna be honest.
I would not
Yeah.
want you to be anything but.
I've been down the water department every day.
Got it.
I'm just not,
Not ready.
I'm not gonna make it, you know what I mean? It's just,
Okay, let's hold on that. I can
Yeah.
tell you that the library trustees have, at the last meeting, they reviewed their, what they had presented before. They may be presenting some slightly different language for inclusion when we get to that. But it's basically the same thing. All right, I'm perfectly happy if we want to do,
No, I appreciate your understanding, it's just
no,
that
that's all right.
right now, time is so precious.
No, that's
you
not a
know.
problem,
Thank you.
because we've done that before.
Yep.
I'm perfectly happy to, because now that tax season is over. I mean, I can take, I'm up for the Board of Health, Historic District, Historical Commission, and the Bylaw Charter Review, the language of those appointed. I'm happy to do that next.
Where are you, Board of Health?
Be a good opportunity to look
Historic.
into the requirements for being on the board.
Yes,
of
it
Health.
would, because that is interesting. How do they do it?
And when I seem to remember sometime in the last, I don't think it happened while I was on the board. So that would have been 98, 99. So somewhere it happened, I think I'm gonna say somewhere in the early 2000s maybe under, you guys didn't do it when you did your revision.
Do what?
What, look at the Board of Health?
Specify that the Board of Health would have a medical professional.
No, we did-
Not that I
no,
remember, no, because we were both on
Interesting
that.
interesting to trace that back, because clearly, I don't recall it ever being something that factored in, but then I could be wrong.
I didn't see an amendment, it's right in here, I thought.
I didn't see an amendment either.
Well, I don't think this specifies. I think-
Unless it's
is it
in the bylaws, I
think-
can't remember.
I think
Oh.
you might be looking at the bylaws for that.
Right,
Right.
I don't think it's specified in here.
in the charter.
So they get an A?
You did good.
Where is the charter? And that is chapter 7.
It must be in the bylaw.
Let me see.
Oh, wait a minute, here it is.
Is it
And it was
7?
amended in 2000, page C16 on the charter. One member at least shall be a doctor
2007,
of
yeah.
medicine or a person with significant experience in public health.
And when was this?
2017.
2017.
Right.
Annual Town Meeting, Article 38.
So it is recent.
Yep.
And I
And
wonder what.
actually, it looks like the Board of Assessors was also changed at that same article for the qualified,
Oh, yeah.
shall be professionally qualified for the duties of that office, which is not a real estate, it's not necessarily
Right,
real
you're
estate.
Yeah, Conservation Commission.
Conservation was
Planning
done the
Board,
same thing,
Oh,
Council on
yeah.
Aging.
Planning
Pull
Board.
out that
Those are, yeah,
article.
pull out that article and take a look at that
Wow.
article.
Rec
Yeah.
and Youth, Cultural Council,
Yeah,
All of them,
zoning,
all of
everything.
them.
They
Yeah.
might have redone,
Unless that amendment was like numbering or something.
might have been numbering, might have been adding alternates,
Yeah.
who knows?
I mean, it could
Oh,
be.
that's true too.
Yeah.
All right,
Got a little
Even cemetery
genealogy to
commission.
work on there.
I will review that, so that is the
That's
ATM 2017 article, okay. Anything else?
Do we have any reason to schedule ourselves for the hour before town meeting?
It's 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
3 weeks from tonight.
I'm only asking if there's any reason for us to want to meet. Would there be?
I mean, unless something comes up and then we could always meet, right? I don't,
We'd have to post.
You'd have to
well, I
post the
know, but I
meeting.
mean, if something
All right.
came up a few days before.
I can't think of any reason why we would, but I'm
No.
just.
Why
throwing
don't
it out
we,
there.
Not unless we'd like to go over a motion,
We're not going to be making any motions.
well, or a statement, sorry,
Well,
or
our
the
sta-
statement,
I think our statement is fairly simple.
so do I.
It's just we
How about
we
we,
came, we saw, we
Concord?
we're okay with it.
Right.
We
Go forth and
support.
vote.
Yeah,
So annual
that's
town
good.
meeting is May, I think it's 3rd,
6th.
6th.
Yeah,
So we should really, so end of April, how about we just kind of, I can ask people if they think we need a meeting, because
Yeah.
it's really a quick posting, anything that's gonna
Right.
come before a town meeting.
yeah.
Exactly.
I think we-
So then the next scheduled meeting is June 11th.
Yes,
I mean, yes, June 11th.
It's
No,
not
it's May 14th.
May
We're not
14th.
meeting, right? Oh, we are.
That's,
3 weeks from tonight.
you're talking about town meeting. This is a different date. Town meeting is May 6th.
Oh, May 6th is, yes.
Yes.
So our next meeting
Yeah,
is
May 14th.
May 14th.
Which is between the town meeting and the election.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I
Aye.
vote twice.
Yes, you can vote twice. All right, 6:05.
I thought we were gonna be here all night.